My name is Linda Vega. I am a Texas native. I was born and raised by the Rio Grande Valley in Westlaco, Texas. I attended Mercedes High School, and I attended UT in Austin. I went to George Washington Law School. Eventually came back to Texas now to run for Senate because I see a lot of gridlock in Washington and I don't see any problem solving. I see our deficit growing at an astronomical rate, and I see laws passing that are infringing on our liberties and possibly breaking into or causing a flux in our prosperity that we've built in Texas.
What experiences do you have to help you solve the problems of the gridlock, to get you through the rush of lobbyists that are going to be at your door?
Okay, that's a very good question. I am an attorney by trade, of course, so I have extensive training in litigation and talking to people. In 2005, I started an organization called Latinos Ready to Vote, where we go out into the communities and talk to people about conservative values. And that is difficult in and of itself because people seemingly are not interested until you open dialogue with them and you really understand why they think the way they think and what is the propensity to have them understand conservative values. And in problem solving, somehow you have to sit in dialogue with other individuals in order to reach a point where we both agree or disagree, but do so respectfully so that we can solve the problem at hand.
You mentioned you were an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people might say we've got too many lawyers in Washington already. What's your response to that?
You know, and probably true. However, in order to enact a law or write a law, you need to understand the realm of language and the realm of how a law gets passed, how it will be applied, how it will be argued, and in hindsight, how it will affect the Constitution. And I think for so long we've allowed people just to pass laws without reading them, like Obamacare. That's a problem. So when we have people who are not understanding what a law is in effect supposed to do for the United States, for our Constitution, it becomes a problem. Anyone can be an attorney, but until you really understand the Constitution and what it's there to do to protect us, then I think it becomes a problem.
You've also mentioned gridlock.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel some people think the government shutdown or slim down or whatever you want to call it was, in part due to the gridlock? Do you think the shutdown was a good thing for this country, or do you think it hurt our economy and hurt our...
Well, I think it hurt our economy, but at the same time it was an eye-opener, because had it not happened in hindsight, we wouldn't be as serious about solving our problems. So sometimes we have to come to that edge of uncertainty to really understand what's at stake. If we would have kept it going at a perpetual level and have allowed the politicians to pass laws that were certainly not beneficial for our country, we would never be at this point to finally realize we really need to get something done.
If Republicans do take the Senate back in 2014, do you support what current Republican leaders in the Senate are doing? Would you support Mitch McConnell as majority leader?
I don't necessarily agree with a lot of his philosophy. I don't think sometimes he acts within the best interest of the country. I think he acts within the best interest of a clique. And that is not what we're there to do. We are there to pass laws that is in the best interest, laws that are in the best interest of the United States. And so sometimes we are going to have to talk to the other side, the Democrat side, but not necessarily in everything and not necessarily agree on everything. However, to solve a problem, we do need better communication and not just this perpetual unresponsive or antagonistic behavior.
How do you commute with, some say, a president who will not negotiate on certain issues?
You know, interesting. He's willing to negotiate with Syria and Iran, put a line in the sand and keep changing that line in the sand, but not for the sake of the country. And that's a problem. So we need to certainly again, open dialogue and talk to him and really realistically show him growing the government with all these policies that he is passing, Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, all these other failures to extend or use his executive power sort of as a bullying tactic is not a good situation for the United States. So we need to really go by the structure, run the government, everyone in the checks and balances, and have a grown-up discussion about what's good for the country, not because your title is president, you've got carte blanche to do what you feel is necessary for your party.
You look at so-called scandals like Benghazi, the unilateral changes to the Affordable Care Act, even Fast and Furious. Do you think the president's committed impeachable offenses?
You know, someone asked me that question the other day about, you know, should we impeach him? The problem with using that word so much, we overuse it, we usurp it, if you will. If we can prove these instances, absolutely, he's responsible for that behavior. The problem is he's cloaked him, or he's barricaded himself with a lot of people that say, well, you can't prove it, or what he's done is within his powers. If that's true, we have to hold him accountable for what he has done. Certainly Benghazi is a disaster. It's a disaster that should have never happened, and we've allowed people who were responsible for that to not own up to it, which is a failure for us. We've allowed Obamacare to be implemented despite the fact that it's going to hurt our economy. We've allowed Fast and Furious to exist without further investigation because we've allowed the Attorney General of the United States to tell us that that is something the president didn't know or wasn't aware of. That's our responsibility as citizens to have our U.S. representatives probe into that and hold them accountable. Would you support
an independent counsel investigating Benghazi, Fast and Furious, those things?
Absolutely. I think it's a necessity. It's certainly our responsibility as citizens to call for such action.
One thing that's on the table is, or appears to be coming up again, is immigration reform. A lot of people said the last bill that was proposed was amnesty. It seems like most Republicans oppose amnesty, but a lot of them supported this bill. What is your definition of amnesty?
I don't even know what amnesty is, honestly. It's been used so much, and if we look it up in a dictionary, it's something about forgiveness. What is there to forgive? I don't advocate for amnesty under any circumstance. What we need is something that's going to solve the problem. If we really are true to this immigration problem that we have, we need to find solutions, not propose these ridiculous laws that sometimes are not going to solve the problem, but allow it to escalate in another decade to become a bigger problem, which is what we've allowed in the last 20 years. We've proposed and passed immigration reform that was supposedly supposed to solve the problem, but what has happened, it's escalated into a bigger problem because we've not held those accountable for this problem as responsible. We have in place these quota systems that interfere with our business structure, our economic viability under immigration, and we allow these laws to be existing that are they're conflicting with each other. So when people say let's enforce the law and that will solve the problem, that's not true, because the laws that exist today in the books under the INA would allow many of these people to stay in this country undocumented and as felons. That's not a good law.
If you oppose amnesty, does that mean you believe that those who are here illegally, undocumented, they should go back first?
I think that in order to do that, we have to really think about what we're saying. If we do mass deportations, we're going to grow the government. If anyone is for growing the government, how can they call themselves conservative? Being a conservative means limited government. We've allowed those people, as I stated earlier, to be in the United States because we've passed bad laws. if we are serious about having a good immigration policy, we need to own up and admit that the laws that we've passed have caused this problem. Let's do away with the laws, shut down that quota system for 2-3 years, allow those who have applied and have been waiting for that visa to obtain that visa so that we can stop the bottlenecking in the process, if you will. Those with violent criminal records, those who are here in the United States to hurt the U.S., certainly they should be deported, and I'm an advocate of that.
On the subject of limited government, what are the biggest cuts that you think need to happen?
The biggest cuts, I would start certainly with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, because I think that is going to grow an agency we already have resentment toward, the IRS. That IRS power is going to go into our small businesses, go into our families, impose a penalty. And guess what? If we can't pay for that penalty, it's like any other penalty assessed by the IRS. They're going to levy our property, our bank accounts, our ability to conduct business. I don't think people have really thought about that, but in allowing this law to pass, we've actually grown the government. And I think we need to defund that. Furthermore, that particular law is going to penalize businesses and families, and people aren't necessarily looking at that. They're looking at something free that they're going to obtain, which is not necessarily going to give them access to good medical care. It's just going to tell them that they have free insurance. A family of 4, for example, is going to have to pay $1,200 to $1,500 a year for that insurance. The state will pay 10% for the first 3-4 years. After those 3-4 years, the state pays 90 to 100%. Where exactly is the state going to come up with that money? From the constituents, from people living in Texas, residents. So, and then businesses, in order to survive, they're going to have to cut their full-time employee staff to part-time. Those people, in essence, are going to lose money by being employed half-time, and they're going to have to go out and find their own health insurance, which they won't be able to afford because it's a vicious cycle. So that law is a monster of a law that's about to be unleashed on Texas prosperity. We haven't even really realized it.
If you could unilaterally add one amendment to the Constitution, whether it's term limits, marriage, pro-life, balanced budget, or even take one away, what would you choose?
I would certainly consider term limits being important. I know we have amendments, our Bill of Rights, that give us access to the rest of those things that you mentioned. Pro-life, that we have protection under the due process under the 14th Amendment. It's all a matter of interpretation by the courts. But I think term limits really holds our candidates accountable and our elected representatives, because they know that they are there in Washington, D.C. for a limited number of years to do their job. When we allow them to exist in Washington perpetually, they have the ability to raise all these funds, stay in power, because no one will question them. And everyone who wants to run for office feels so conflicted, or they feel that they can't amass that amount of fortune that these other candidates have in their war chest to be able to run for office. So it's almost like an intimidation factor. And I think if we had term limits, that would certainly help our country run at a without gridlock and more as a problem-solving government.
How can people find out more about your campaign?
You can go to lindavegafortexas.net. We have a contribution button, we have volunteer button, we have any type of information that you may want to read about me. You can even ask me questions, and I certainly will be happy to get back to you as soon as I get the message.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and best of luck to you.
Thank you very much.